Lanes podcast. Happy New Year. We're back. Glad to have you guys back along with us as well. Me and Chuck, we've been doing a little preparation trying to get ready for the new year, and we're going to start things off this year with the bang. We have our resident legal expert that is joining us this evening, Mr. Hank Seaton. It's always a great show, a great time whenever we have Hank up and on board with us. But before we get to Hank, let's welcome my co-host Chuck Snow in. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing great, Rico. It's great to be here. Happy New Year to you and our listeners. I'm looking forward to 2023. I think it's going to be a phenomenal year, in spite of some challenges that the economy is having here and there, such as inflation. But I think the logistics and trucking sectors will make out just fine in the end.
Well, this is the first broadcast of the year. And so we no better way to start it off than by having our main man, our resident legal expert Hank Seaton, come and join us and bring us up to speed on all the goings on. Of course, new calendar year flips over, so if there's anything that new that may have taken effect or new laws on the book that we may not be aware of or may have slipped our mind, Hank, I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you bring us up to speed.
Okay, well, in terms of kind of a legislative update, I can't be as encouraging as my friend from north of the border is, because we're living with a few things they don't have. Among the things that are on the table is the continued winning away at the owner-operator model. We've been doing the best we can to try to hold our Department of Labor down here in abeyance. They want to come in with a joint employer status that would make the organization, if they want to do it, of the union. Another provision that would make it easier to classify an owner-operator as an employee. All of that is just mischief that we have to deal with. A couple of new things on the block that we may talk about tonight. There is a move afoot to go back to increase the auto liability coverage to $2 million. And you know, the poor newbies that are getting in, finding $2 million minimum will basically just set the insurance or the plaintiff's bar's demand a little higher. They always demand policy limits, so the settlement value of a sprained neck could go to $2 million. I'm not sure it's a very good idea, and we'll just see how it plays out. Obviously, the plaintiff's bar is in favor of it, and obviously the argument is also medicine and cost of everything's going up, and it hadn't been adjusted for years. So it is an issue that people can argue both ways. I think it's probably this next year's sleeper argument. And then the other thing that I'd like to talk about tonight is a couple of things that the FMCSA has done with reference to broker regulations. I think most people who've been in the business for a while have had some real life experience with double brokerage, fraud, identity theft. And actually, industry hadn't helped itself much. The spot market, in the past 10 years has become such an important source of backhaul freight. Its good points is it eliminates empty miles. It gets people miles at home, but it really put so much technology in it that the value of personal relations, the value of vetting a carrier on anything other than licensed, authorized insurance, kind of 30 minutes with some guy you've never met and you can't vet very well. It's a fertile field for crooks.
Right.
What can you say? And you
Yeah,
can say
that's exactly right.
they come in all nationalities. Okay, but there tends to be something tribal about it in a way. Uh, it seems like when you run into one of these, it's organized crime, guys. It's usually not
It
just
is.
one off Charlie. When you dig deep enough, you find that this is a hub and spoke deal. It's been around for 3 generations, and somehow even the biggest and brightest don't feel like they can get anywhere trying to chase it. And that's made more complex because the FMCSA has never felt as though it was its imperative to do that. They didn't have the budget for it. They thought that safety
Well, they don't
was
have
their
the manpower
North
for it
Star.
right now. They don't have the manpower. They don't even have the manpower to do the upgraded safeties on everybody. To give people
Well, they got a lot of
satisfactory.
new money last time around, but you know, I, there's certainly people that disagree with me. But if the new manpower is going to be to beef up SMS methodology, it's kind of like, well, where are you going, Charlie? Ultimately, we've told them for the past 4 or 5 years that take your new carrier audit and expand it and give people who pass it a satisfactory safety rating. That'd go a long way to leveling the playing field and getting the reptile out of the situation. But that really hadn't been accomplished. So I think the time has come for industry as a whole, if we can organize, to just say, look, National Transportation, and it's supposed to encourage small and large businessmen, and it's supposed to be a level playing field. And actually, it's a playing field where the cop on the block who blows the whistle is supposed to be DOT. And hey, the way the government's giving away money, don't you think they ought to have a special victims unit for the trucking industry, since it's their mandate to keep it clean? So
Yeah,
I hope that gets made, and Chuck can lobby in on this because I know he's got some personal experience with it.
yeah,
You've been in this long enough, you're going to get hooked and crooked.
yeah. And you know what? It does take. I saw a special the other night on Rudy Giuliani, and when he was I guess he was the DA or whatever in New York, and he he brought down the mafia because he decided to go after them, and we need a guy like a gangbuster like a Rudy Giuliani that is on our side, that's going to go and take these guys down.
Well, one of the things that I'm having a hard time professionally bringing together is, it seems like the community of carriers and brokers that used to be based upon friendships and fair treatment has now gotten to sign my contract, draconian as it may be, and similarly, you know, uh, you can't fix stupid. If you signed it, you're stuck with it. Uh, the truckload world is entirely different from the LTL world.
Right.
Would you believe that the LTL carriers, there are a number of them around, are now coming up with something called an electronic bill of lading, and they're going to use, makes good sense. Issue an electronic bill of lading so you don't have to have a signature. But their electronic bill of lading is going to incorporate their new standard terms and conditions.
Right.
Do you think for 1 minute that the truckload carriers could ever get together and say, we're going to publish our service terms and conditions and make our limits of liability established? It's just two different mindsets. And why does it resolve that self? only because truckload carriers are so plentiful, and
Yes.
because shippers dictate the terms. And
You've only got
you know,
you're right. You've only got a couple handfuls of national, if there's that many, of national LTL carriers in all United States, um, doing regular LTL work.
Right.
And when you look at how many truckload carriers, and even at the mega carrier status, there's still quite a few. And these people, they fight tooth and nail for every contract. And once
well,
somebody
I,
wins a contract, somebody loses a contract.
yeah, I don't want to sound like an apologist for the LTL carriers, because I've always thought that a lot of what they did wasn't really fair. But does it make any sense to anybody on the phone that if an LTL is worth 50,000 bucks, that pursuant to their tariff, if it's a used machine, it's only worth $500? When the same
Yeah,
used machine, if it's given to an expediter or to a truckload carrier, will be worth a minimum of 100,000. More likely,
yeah,
the contract has no limit in it. So the poor guy who just doesn't have the right tariff or doesn't catch it can get hung for $10 million he doesn't have and be bankrupt.
Oh, easily, and it happens every day because we have, first of all, we have too many people in our industry that don't know what they're doing. They don't know what to ask. Um, First of all, carriers themselves, an awful lot of small carriers that I've run into, don't know their own insurance limitations. They don't know what they can't haul. They assume, and one of the
That's
worst.
true, but look at it this way. I mean, you go to somebody who's got great owner operator for years. Now he's got his own authority and he's got to go get liability and cargo insurance.
Right.
You think he can read that cargo policy? Do you
No.
think if he does read the cargo policy, he's going to have anything else other than RMAC, which is legal liability, with just a few exceptions, like theft, like wetness, dampness, and moisture? And do you think his agent's going to tell him that although he's hauling tarp lumber, he's got an exclusion for wetness, dampness, and moisture? I mean, it's tough. There ain't nobody out there on the side of the little guy, and there are very few people writing it.
You do have to know. I think one of the things as a motor carrier of any size, whether you have one truck or a dozen or 1,000 trucks, you need to know what your exclusions are. That's really important because that's where you get into trouble. Those are what I like to call the bear traps here in the industry. And you get somebody that grabs the load
I
from
got really tired. You do need to know that a
right.
few years ago, I got really tired of little guys and even large guys not having the foggiest what the exclusions were until they happened. And so I put out this letter to guys that I said, look, when you're bidding insurance, I want you to send this to your agent, because otherwise he's just going to give you this certificate
Right.
of insurance that says they're mid. Look, when you go put this out for bid, I want you to come back and certify to me that the policy covers these things. I mean, obviously, if you're hauling flatbed stuff, you put in your wetness, dampness, moisture. If you're hauling high value, but basically, you went through and put your agent on the spot. Now, I didn't get very many compliments from agents because of that, because they really didn't know and they didn't want to be monkey in the middle. But then I tried to do it with the underwriters, and on behalf of a big broker, I wrote them a letter and I said, look, we've got to evaluate your coverage when we hire a small carrier, because he may not know, and we don't want to give a theft-prone item to somebody who doesn't have theft. So how about you guys just telling us what your standard exclusions on your policy? Send it to, well over a dozen. I think it was 17. Only 2 people responded.
So let me ask you something. Were these brokers, the insurance brokers, that handled a lot of truck clients, or were these guys that handled all sorts of different businesses and had some truck clients? Because there's a huge difference.
That's between the big ones and the little ones.
Well, no, there's some smaller brokers out there, insurance brokers that know their stuff. They're smaller insurance houses, but they know their stuff. And then you get one of the problems we've seen through the years is you get somebody buying a policy from, and a lot of times it's a rural guy. He buys his truck insurance, and the same guy buys his farm insurance. The guy buys his life insurance, and he's not a specialist.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's listening tonight, but our friend Tommy Root and the people that he works with are definitely people that know the industry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been to.
And you're so right. Had a claim, and he found out that although he had like $800,000 worth of insurance, that there was an exclusion in it for wetness, dampness, and moisture, and he hauled heavy machinery.
Right.
So he had one loss. His agent dummied up, and his insurance company said, "Yeah, that exclusion is in our Form 40. You should have had Form 50."
Oh.
And so we said, well, okay, so who gets Form 50? And he says, well, some of the bigger carriers take it. So I mean, the guy was just set up.
Yeah.
So Hank, I'm all about solutions. We talk about a lot of problems and things like that. And I think you said, or you alluded to earlier, that you kind of had like a little checklist. Do you still have that checklist on file or something like that, so that maybe?
Well, yeah, but you're kind enough to plug my book. There's a chapter in there on frequent exclusions, and I would, if I were going to shop my insurance, I'd probably start with that chapter and think which of those things are particularly lethal in my industry. And I'd probably tell my agent, now look, here's a list of provisions that makes a policy not even as good as the law requires. I mean, I'm not talking about reject it, crush it, and dump it, or indemnity, or things that get way out beyond legal liability. I'm just saying, if I want to be a conscientious provider and say, look, I'll give you Carmack, which is a legal standard. There's got to be an effort to mitigate damages. There's got to be the right of inspection. There are rules here. I'll give you straight Carmack with no exclusions. And if you want something more, let me know, and we'll talk about what it's going to cost to buy a spike.
Part 5 and Part 6.
That ought to be it. People say, well, that's great for you to say, Hank. You'll never get any business. You won't take the risk.
Part 5 and Part 6, chapters 13 through 17 in Hank's book covers all those things that we just talked about. So that right there is another reason why you should make sure that you. We normally do it at the end of the show, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in right now.
Thank you. But anyway, there are for the little guy, and I don't want to, some of the big family names on the back of trucks started with a guy who had a 6th grade education. Yep. And entrepreneurship isn't limited only to be like Elon Musk. So I'm just saying, let's the little guys just needs the tools, and
Right.
it's particularly when you've got a moving target and the contract asks for even more than's legally so in the middle of the 40-page contract. There's something in there that's going to make your life miserable. You just got to find it.
Right. So okay. So last year, Hank, the last time that we did have you on, we had a little bit of a breaking news. We was talking a little bit about the ruling about dispatch services and things of that nature. We didn't really get a chance to go in depth into it that particular show because we was on some other things, but it was coming down that they had made a ruling about dispatch services. So I'm going to ask you if you don't mind to let's circle back around and touch on that real quickly.
Yeah, that's certainly worth it. From rule, and it was a finding that under guidance, if you were a multiple agent, in other words, you were uh, uh, basically hunting the internet for loads for people, as long as you didn't handle the money, you didn't have to have a broker's.
Okay.
And I think that was one really bad decision.
Can I ask you? Can I stop you real quickly, Hank, to ask your opinion on just that aspect of it? So when they're saying as long as you don't handle money, does that also mean that they can't negotiate?
No, they can negotiate, but therein is the problem. The way it was presented to them, there's no reason a guy who used to be a salesman for Schneider can't go out and represent 10, 15, or 20 people. That the real thing the broker regulations are intended to do is to keep somebody from embezzling freight charges. Okay. So that ostensibly, if this guy says, well, I'm an agent for 6 people, but the money is all billed by and going to the carrier, and I'm being paid a percentage, then I shouldn't be classified as a broker. Okay, so that was their spin, and their spin, and the support comes largely from all of the 100,000 guys who are getting into the business and aren't able to deal with the internet.
Right.
So they're getting some guy who's tired of working for an LTL carrier or whatever has got some.
But Hank, I got to ask you a question.
And okay.
Did the law not read? But hold on a second. Did the law not read that if you arranged transportation, you needed a broker's license? Let's put the money aside.
Absolutely. It said very simply that if you were involved in arranging transportation for compensation, you had to have a broker's license unless you were part of the ordinary operation of a single carrier. So you could go be a commissioned sales agent for Landstar, but you damn well couldn't represent Landstar and 20 more. Now, what they did not look at is the broker regulations extend a whole lot of protection and a whole lot of continuity that's beyond whether or not they embezzle the funds. Look at it this way. A broker is required to select a carrier who's licensed, authorized, and insured. A dispatch service who represents 15 people has absolutely no accountability to whether the guy that bumps the dock has authority.
Right.
The fear is when it comes to vicarious liability that if I've got 15 sales agent agreements today and 16 tomorrow, why am I going to bother to qualify the 16th carrier if he's got a truck and somebody else has got a load, I'll just say, oh, well, I'm sending in Rico Express here.
Right.
Okay. So now he's in a perfect position to set up the broker, thinking he's got Rico. This guy is out here buying and selling a freight. Now he may be just be getting a commission, but he's going to turn around and get a commission back door. Well, the agency's argument, and follow this out, I guess, is that every Tom, Dick, and Harry who has a sales agent can be reached on the phone and somehow verify that the guy's for real.
Right.
Because they're not even going to, that he's got 15 legitimate people looking for loads. Now that's where it really breaks down, because if you're working for an insurance company and you're selling their product and you have the authority to bind them, you've got to have what's called the power of the pen. You've got to be able to demonstrate to somebody that you are legit. I'm a lawyer. I know damn well that if I sign a pleading that says I'm the lawyer for you, I darn well better be, because I'm going to lose my license. And what I'm saying is the agency hasn't thought that out.
Because you're entering into a contract on behalf of Rico's Trucking or Chuck's Trucking.
What'd you say?
Because you're entering into a contract on behalf of Rico's Trucking or Chuck's Trucking.
Well, and this all goes back to this hijack and employment by theft. Let me give you guys this example. We had over on the air freight side, some guy with one hell of a website. He'd been around for years, and he said he was a broker. And air freight, there's part of it's exempt, most of it isn't. So anyway, what he did was he factored all of his receivables as a broker. Okay, so the money never touched his hands, just the advances did. Okay, so when the jig was finally over, his factor closed him down. Factor came in, put him into bankruptcy, and when it was divulged how many motor carriers had been scammed, it turned out that they claimed they owed 3,300 motor carriers, well over $2 or $3 million, and all of that money had been taken out of the advances from the factor. So, I mean, the idea that you're going to say, well, he didn't handle the money, so somehow it didn't run through his hands is absolutely crazy. These people are going to be one step ahead of that.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
that's
I've got mixed motion. If we got people on the phone that want to disagree with me, that's fine. I understand that a little guy getting started may not have a wife who can help him find loads on the call board. I understand you need some expertise, but look, I can't imagine what kind of businessman you're going to be if you can't come up with a $2,500 bond. And meanwhile, you're the guy that's out there servicing you's got $150,000 in the truck. So, I mean, I just don't see it as anything else other than, you got to pay something to business. But anyway, the interesting thing there is they came out with yet a new one last week. They were told 4 years ago, I guess, to look at how bond companies pay their bonds. Right. And they have decided that they're going to put in new rules with respect to people who post trust agreements. Right. Now, there are a lot of folks that have trust agreements. And I've always felt like the rules were really pretty clear. It said that they had to be held in trust by a bona fide financial. If you got a trust fund, readily available assets. It's not the same as being an unlicensed surety. Well, the agency apparently has come out with a new rule in which they're setting new time limits in which trust funds have to be replenished. It looks like they're going to make it more difficult to get satisfy that. What kind of disruption that will cause, I don't know. Some trust that there's no there. You know, they're only
Right.
they're only as solvent as they are to collect premiums and have them to pay them out. There are others been around for a long time, and I don't know whether there's any there or not, but they do as good a job of mitigating the claims as other people. But you can see you got an agency that's kind of being asked to make decisions in a vacuum. And what we probably need to do is fish and focus on what are our real objectives, which is to avoid fraud, to see that honest people are paid for what they haul. And on that, hey, if there's somebody in the room who doesn't agree with it, you don't need to be in the room. I mean, it's just kind of basic, you know.
So let me do this real quick as well. I forgot to do this earlier when we first came on, but if you guys don't mind, do us a huge favor. If you're watching the video, like, share, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, like, share, and subscribe. If you're on Instagram or any other platforms, we need you guys to like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show, especially if you think that this is some information that could be useful to them. We definitely appreciate it. We need all the help we can get to try to get the word out as much as we can. Since we switched over to this new video format, we trying to expand a little bit and get a little bit more interaction going on. If you have a question, you can type your question down in the chat. We should see it. So just type your question or comment down in the chat. We always welcome any kind of interaction that you guys provide with us. And with that being said, I'm going to jump back into Hank. So we were talking about any other regulations that may be coming down the pike as far as the new year is concerned. But what else, Hank, on the front of, we talked a little bit briefly about the fight with the owner operator status and things of that nature. Where do we stand specifically on those things? I know that California still has a lot of stuff going on. Is that stuff starting to make its way across the country as well?
Yeah, the California thing. The court didn't take the rights, which means that California law applies in California. And I understand that it's enforcing. California clients are looking at 3 or 4 alternatives to try to save the driver relationship. And, one option is, as we know, is for the owner operator to go get his own authority and maybe be a power only carrier. But we did some analysis on that in response to something DOL was saying, that it's really, as long as insurance rates are not even, and as long as brokerage commissions are as high as they are, it's going to be hard for an owner operator in California to be his own operator and have a chance of making nearly as much money as he does when his carrier partner is not only finding him freight, but also providing other goods and services. So, it's going to be a tough road to hoe there. A lot of people out in California are trying different things. I don't see any real help in sight, although there are still arguments that should have been made, that can be made, that federal preemption should apply to it. What I'm seeing is in other states, particularly blue states that are kind of broke to start with, they're coming out with really strange Department of Labor findings and stuff such as that. New Jersey, for instance, came out a carve out for motor carriers who pay by the mile or on the percentage. And they stuck a carrier and said, well, you don't deserve the carve out because you're passing full through accessorial charges. And if you're passing through accessorial charges, you're not paying on a percentage or on miles. Have you ever heard anything that sounded more contorted? And then I was talking to the
It's
guy.
New Jersey. What do you expect?
Yeah, I was talking to the guy that got the decision the other day. And I said, well, look, why don't you just appeal it and tell him, hey, what are you talking about? We pay 100% of the accessorials. It just doesn't make any sense. And it gets, in that case, down to what is transportation. Somebody in the state of New Jersey decided that if the wheels weren't turning, it wasn't transportation. I don't know where they get that. If you bill and pay for detention, it's because the freight's still on the truck, and that's part of the transportation because it's transportation until the freight gets off the truck. It just. But I mean, when you're dealing with people who probably have a bias, but also don't have any expertise, it's in the issue. It's a tough place to be a lawyer.
Yeah. You know what? I think all these states that are passing these crackpot laws don't understand what they're doing. And I think right now, California's got bigger worries right now other than AB5. If they're even going to have roads for trucks to drive on with the storms they're having. They've lost their, there's a real transition now away from California in produce. Because other states and Mexico are picking up a lot of the California business, and believe it or not, there are growing companies up here in Canada, making contracts on both greenhouse and non-greenhouse crops. We do a lot of growing during the growing season outside, berries, and these were some of the California-based growers that are up here. Now either buying their own place or contracting. And my understanding is that in Ontario here up in the over in the Leamington area, which is just on the Canadian side of Detroit, there's an amazingly large greenhouse community there. It's a real interesting phenomena because it jouts so far out. They get an awful lot of sun, and there's about I would say 15 large greenhouse operations. And I'm talking, some of them are multi-billion-dollar operations. And they're starting to grow 12 months a year, which they never did before. But because some of the the produce areas like California aren't producing anything anymore.
Well, I read an article a little earlier that was talking a little bit about the strawberry crops in California are being affected heavily due to the massive rain that they've been occurring, and that also that we're having some problems with, like you said, Mexico and Florida was kind of taking up the slack as far as the marketplace is concerned, but they're in Mexico, they are also faced with a lot of apparently there's a lot of civil unrest that's happening down in Mexico with the cartels and everything. And so things are kind of been kind of slow and sporadic coming even from down in Mexico and Texas area. So
one thing I want to get, and then I got a question for Chuck. As we go into the next year, in terms of the group of diverse people that we've got in ASEC, we're going to be booting up with more people, more diversity. I've asked Tommy if he'll come on the board. I think I've asked both of you, just so that when we when we need to make a decision, we've got a number of representatives, diverse representatives, particularly to make the argument that not everybody tries to buy a politician. We just
Right.
want to find yours, and and be able to, in some sense, ATA has a fly, and we may have a drive-in, but in some sense, be able to effectively reflect industry interest. And in that regard, Rico, if all of your sophisticated login would let people join or express an interest in one of these issues, I'd be happy to flag them and keep them advised, and what their particular issues are, and that includes these scams, because I'm happy with the fact you got a hot line from the FMCSA, and the people that are supposedly tracking these frauds aren't doing a very good job. So,
Well,
There's too many of them.
that's the main issue. Is that the main issue apparently is that there's no one that, even though we may have all of these different laws and everything that are set up and designed to have some type of protection, but there's no one guarding the hen house. There's no one out that's actually enforcing what it is that we talked about, that we need to get, to actually enforce the protections that are supposed to be in place for us.
the old idea of vetting,
my pay grade.
The old idea of vetting somebody wasn't just licensed, authorized, and insured, and they've been reported lately. It was basically, there weren't so many folks that you couldn't say, I want some references. And you kept asking for references until you got somebody you knew and trusted, And I think it's crazy the way it is now, that you got to sign the page that mypackage.com sends you, and you can't change a word of that. But at the same time, although they've got hundreds of people, I guess, who signed it, nobody's really dug down to ask the questions: who are these guys and who vouches for them?
Yeah.
Right, and
I think most of us, when it comes to working for someone to help around the house, something, ask somebody you trust. Who do you recommend?
right.
And that's not in trucking anymore.
No, it moves fast, and what we've just gone through, things were moving really fast. There were an awful lot of loads, and brokers were grabbing anybody that said they had a truck, and that's where they got into trouble all over the place. They were so desperate to move freight, and there was a lot of inexperience in some of the brokerage companies, and people made mistakes, and the crooks knew damn well this was going on.
You see, you were had pretty happy prospects in the new year. Do you think that the frauds are going to ebb because of the
Always gets
change around of supply?
Anytime, I got to tell you, Hank, my experience has been anytime we've ever had any type of downturn in the economy at all, you get more frauds and you get more cargo thefts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just comes with it. You get people that are, and sometimes you get more. You also get more bankruptcies. There'll be some brokers out there that will be using the carrier's money that should be in a trust account, or should be it's earmarked for the carriers, and they're using that money as their free operating line.
Yeah, I mean,
You
just hit on something that neither one of us would be particularly popular with, because I believe that the broker regulations, just like we talked about for the broker bond, ought to be a constructive trust.
100%.
I don't think they should live off of live off the
They
float,
can't.
so that when they do file bankruptcy, all the banks with the secured loans come in and sweep
Right.
it up. But I'm sorry, I got your money from Purina, but I spent it.
It's not, yeah, but
Oh
that's
well,
not you know what? It's funny. Up
not
here
the
in
intent.
Canada, I got to say, the banks have gotten smarter in Canada than they used to be. What the banks do now for load brokerages, they used to say, okay, you've got you're doing $1 million a month, and you know what? We're going to give you a line of credit based on that. And now the banks are looking and they're going, okay, you're turning $1 million a month, of which $100,000 of that is yours. The other 900,000 belongs to your suppliers. So really, you have $100,000 a month, not a million, and they work off of that. And that's the right way to do it.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that really supports the carrier from getting ripped off by the broker.
Yeah, and realistically, a broker's commission is his
That's right.
gross
Right.
income.
Right.
And that's where, I've seen some of these brokers get into trouble because they go out and they spend the carrier's money on themselves. They've never seen that much money in a bank account in their lives, and it doesn't last long.
That's sure what these people in California did. They went out and factored.
Yeah. I don't understand. You know what? That's one thing I still can't understand to this day. And we ran into that many, many years ago with a brokerage company that I was financially involved in. And we had the Canadian arm of DAT on side. They wanted a piece of this because we had it all packaged up nicely. But what we couldn't figure out was how to legally and morally uh, act as a broker or act as a factor when we were dealing with brokers. Like, how could a broker factor an account? They really couldn't
Chuck,
because it wasn't
right on,
it
right on,
wasn't theirs.
right on.
Um,
It's not theirs.
no, it wasn't their money to be factoring. It was already earmarked for the carrier.
That's interesting because a lot of people operate exactly like that. They operate off of a factor company.
Yes, and I still listen. I'm a big believer that factoring is there for when you need it. Okay, it's there if it's there when you have a tight situation. It's great, but you can't run your business just using factoring for, especially in this market right now. Using factoring to run your business. Use it all you want for when you need it. If you have a slow paying customer, you've got to, and we all get our back up against the wall. And that's what it's there
Yeah,
for.
Chuck, I don't want apologists for factors because, that's like being an apologist for attorneys. We have such a bad reputation. Somebody says, well, what are you talking about? But
There's some
an
great
argument,
factors out there, and there's some great attorneys.
if the argument can be made for a small guy getting into business, that the best contact he can make is with a responsible factor, because I agree that when you look at that the guy is paying, even if it's only 1 or 2%, that seems to be a whole lot of money. But then you add into it that the day terms. All right,
That's part of the
if
issue.
he's an operator, he's paying it on 15. He's got to wait 90. That's the cost of doing business. What the factor brings to the show, though, is the factor's got the best credit references going. they're
I
the
agree.
ones. The big ones are the ones that know where the crooks are, and they do it. They do it without recourse. The other thing is the
Yeah.
really good ones probably have a fuel program. They probably have other
Right,
things that are
right.
give backs. And
Value,
if you've got
quote unquote value added services.
There you
yeah,
go.
it's a
Yeah.
value added service. And if you're with a good factor, and all of a sudden some broker wants to offset a rejected crush it and dump it, he's probably going to get a call from the factor.
Yeah.
You know, little that's my friend, that's my good count. Can't we work this
You're
out?
right. You know what? It's but the danger that I've seen is that factoring has certainly gotten a lot of people started in this business. But they once you start building your business using a factoring company for your line of credit, and you're trying to build your business that way, the money's too expensive. The 1%, yeah, that's fine, but you're never, you know, if it's a strict 1%, it's 12% a year. You can afford that. That's fine. Start getting into 2 and 3%. If we're talking 3%, we're really talking 36% a year.
Getting into your margin
That
quickly,
gets
yeah.
expensive. Number one. Number two, you did mention about the 90-day shipper. Well, we had the odd one of those at Traffics, okay, that took 90 days. But through the years, we cleaned out most of them. And we got rid, I felt many years ago that even 60 days gave people too much time for things to change. And we just didn't want very many 60-day accounts. Now, some of them started out with, especially some of the multinationals, some of the great big huge food companies, they're giants to deal with. It's their terms. They have the volume, and you need them. But can a little guy afford to pay the 3% a month for 90 days? Okay. Now all of a sudden he's giving up 90.
Yeah, you're buying the business, and the big food company is a publicly traded company, and if you're taking three times the hit they would if they just advanced
That's
it to
right.
themselves. I mean, I agree with you. It's a crooked game, but the other thing is from the point of view of the businessman, even though he's not well capitalized, that's a cost. That just very simply doesn't it seem to you to be? Well, I guess not. I'm always surprised when somebody says, "Well, gee, we'll give you quick pay, but we're going to charge you for it." I mean, that's their indebtedness. It should be, why are you paying them to pay you a banker?
So I'm going.
Is
I'm
your
going.
dog chasing your duck there?
No, that's my duck call. That's my duck call. That's just my duck. Talk to her later.
So look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at the time, and like I said, whenever we have Hank on, it goes far too fast. First show of the new
Oh yeah.
year. Glad for everyone that joins us. If you look across the bottom of the screen, there's a link right down there to Hank's website. You can go over there and check out the website. That's where you can order this book, Rules of the Road, a practical guide to legal issues in truck and transportation. This book is worth its weight in gold. I affectionately call it the Trucking Bible. You definitely need to keep this close by. Order 2 copies. Keep one in the truck. Keep one on your desk. I can't even begin to tell you how much information is inside of it. And like Hank touched on tonight when we was talking about insurance, when you're getting ready to go through your insurance renewals and things of that nature, it would probably be a great help if you had this book to be able to go through and check to make sure while you're going through that process, as tedious as it is on one end, to go through and check and make sure that you have yourself covered. Just we talk about this. This is entrepreneurs. You are a business person now. It's your own. We're small guys. We don't have a big legal team. Luckily, we have a resident legal expert that comes on and joins us from time to time that shares information, takes time out of his schedule to do so. So for it's a small. I'm not even gonna say it's a small price to pay, but I just think that it's worth your time to go over and just make sure that you pick up a copy of the book.
Probably the best money anybody that owns one truck or 1,000 is going to spend.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Appreciate that,
And with that being said, and Hank doesn't, Hank is humble enough and gracious enough with his time. He comes on and he doesn't send me an invoice or none of that good stuff. So we definitely appreciate Hank for taking time out of his schedule. How often is it that you can get an hour of an attorney's time and it's not going to cost you at least $200? So
Not just an attorney's time, Rico, but one of the top transportation attorneys in the United States.
Well, I appreciate the comments. If I can help folks, I'm about to get to the age where I'm looking at doing more of that.
Absolutely. Well, Hank, we definitely, as for Chuck and myself, we're always in your debt. We appreciate you for taking time out to come on and join us. We definitely appreciate you for doing so.
Welcome.
Is there anything that you want to say, Hank, before we get ready to close out tonight?
No, other than if I've been contacted by some little smaller groups of new entrants and folks, and I'd kind of like to expand the group of people that ATA usually does this when they've got something they want to lobby with. They want to add up as many stakeholders as they can. And if there are people that are interested in this stuff, as you know, we put out a monthly newsletter on updates and things like that. And if anybody's interested in receiving it, and doesn't want to read anything else, it'll give you a pretty good idea of what these things are that are tracking. And then particularly on this question of fraud and abuse, if you've been stung real good, let me know. We may be able to tell you some more information on what's going on. There's also, if you've been involved in it, that there are a lot of collection agencies out here promising that you've got some recourse and muddying up the water. So it's a big fiasco.
Definitely.
And I just really pray you're blessed and don't get caught in it. But there are things we can do to keep it from happening. Biggest thing for you guys is when you go in and pick up the bill of lading, if there's somebody's name on it you don't recognize, you need to realize you have got a lien on that load. You don't have to deliver it until you get straight who it is that's supposed to be paying it. I would really recommend that you don't even load the doggone thing up until you ask that tough question. Why?
Yeah. That's a sure telltale sign when a broker sends you in there and you're a carrier and it's got another carrier's name on it. Quite often there's some monkey business going on somewhere.
Yeah, and the thing you can tell your driver to tell him is say, look, my boss just told me that if our insurance is going to apply and we're going to accept responsibility for it and we're going to get paid, then we're the ones that are signing the receipt for this. This thing has got Joe Blow on it. And I don't work for Joe Blow. I don't even know who he is.
If you ever see how the big carriers operate, they because I've seen it 1,000 times. The shipper will prepare a shipper's bill of lading. Any of the large carriers go in. There's a bill of lading. The driver brings in a bill of lading, and he may even handwrite it out. Some of them, and it's on their company bill of lading. He said, "I don't really care what you give me, but you're signing this one because that's what I have to have."
At the end of the day, I think that it's something from way back when. And Hank, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it's the motor carrier's responsibility to issue the bill of lading. Is that correct?
Well, here's the story. Before we mess things up with contracts, the bill of lading was the contract.
Exactly.
and it was prescribed by statute. It was a uniform bill of lading. There are even things called bills of lading
Right.
act. Okay, now what you had was the deal was sealed in that document. Then we got what they call 14401B waivers after the great undercharge issue, and the shippers all said, "Nevermore. You're not going to screw us again, carriers. We're going to go to our procurement lawyers and we're going to come out with the wickedest contract you've ever seen." And so they completely waive the bill of lading. Take it off. They say this 14 pages is the deal between us. You can't modify it. You can't change it. You change the contract. So they're saying, look, this document that we're signing is just a receipt. And the actual statute now is 373, and it says you don't have to issue a bill of lading. You've got to issue a receipt. Origin, destination, commodity, weight, and guess what? Name of carrier. So if I'm going to issue a receipt for goods, it's got to say who is the bailee, who's got it. And, our argument is that, a consignor or a consignor can say whoever he wants on it. But, at the same time, I've told people before, look, if you get back a bill of lading and for some reason it's got a bunch of squirrely stuff on it and you hauled it, you put a POD stamp on it before you send it to anybody. And that says this proof of delivery is evidence provided of services provided by Covenant Transport. Okay. Because you damn well have got an aberrant bill and, you want to be sure that your authority and your insurance apply. So I'm just saying that really these people that keep trying to say that, oh, well, we've got recourse to the shipper, really are probably wrong because they signed some flipping contract that waived the bill of lading. You waived all
like
those
I was
rights,
saying
buddy.
when we was closing out, if you had the book, you would be able to see that and know before you sign that type of contract.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I know Chuck's seen this over the years. It's not that complex, but it keeps getting played over and over again. I don't know. I think sometimes some of the big carriers who outsource a lot of their freight really want to hide the name of the pickup carrier, and that's why their name is on it. But that's dangerous. Right. That's dangerous as hell because when Two Truck Charlie hits a school bus and your name's on the bill, plaintiff's bar says, "Oh, happy day."
Well, Hank, we appreciate you again. Thank you again for taking time out to join us. We always are eternally grateful for you doing so.
Well, I've enjoyed it, guys.
Appreciate you again. Chuck, let the good people know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll get ready to wrap this thing up.
All right. Best way to get a hold of me is just send me an email, chuck@traffix, TRAFFIX.com. Include your phone number because these days it's much quicker for me to just phone you. And whether you need to get set up at a Traffix office, I still know a lot of people there, or you need some advice or you need a hand with something. My whole thing is to give back. This industry has been phenomenal to my family and to me, and I just want to give back and play it forward. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back into a hole for another week.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to try to get this show republished. We're going to put it back up on Instagram where you can go back on Instagram and just watch it whenever you want to. It's already should be recording onto YouTube. Like I said before, like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show if you think that this information can help someone out that is in the trucking industry. That is our core audience that we like to appeal to, the small trucking guy that doesn't have a legal staff, that doesn't have access to a lot of the different things that the more sophisticated carriers have. We pride ourselves on trying to bring you real experts in the industry that know what they're talking about. We're not just lunchroom counter advice over here. So with that being said, I want to say God bless you. Happy New Year. Welcome. Keep it in between the mustard and the manna. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And we'll see you guys next time. Catch you on as Chuck, as my
See you
good
next
friend
time,
Chuck would
guys.
say.
Catch you on a flip flop.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Night, guys.
God bless.